And thank you for running under rather than over. Our second speaker is Gene Ensminger of Caltech. Gene?
Thank you very much. I actually found this a very tough assignment. I feel, or I felt very much so, that I probably, of all the people in this room, have the greatest both personal debt of friendship to Doug and Elizabeth and also intellectual debt. However, it's been obvious, and in many private conversations, the degree to which other people feel exactly the same way. And I think it's a great tribute to both of you, Doug and Elizabeth. I have a funny story about how Doug and I met. And Andy Rutten, who's around here somewhere, plays a role in this, but I think Andy doesn't know the whole story either. Andy had, the great connector, Andy Rutten, had discovered that Doug and I should have common interests and should meet and talk, but it was actually my department chairman who informed me that it had come to Doug's attention that I was teaching a course with political economy in the title. And I was, I think, encouraged in rather strong terms by my department chair, this is my first or second year here, that I should definitely go pay Doug a visit. This is a rather uncomfortable conversation because Doug began by wanting to know exactly what my credentials were. My degree in economics, for example, that qualified me to teach political economy. This was roughly the same time that I was getting hammered from the anthropologists for including political economy in the title of my articles, because political economy to anthropologists meant something very different, namely Marxism, and I didn't seem to be writing in that vein, and therefore I was going to bat with anthropology editors, defending myself, and I might add I won those battles thanks to some editors. I realized before very long that Doug was not rebuking me, but rather inviting me into the community and inviting me to learn, share, and be educated through the wonderful community here that existed in the Center for Political Economy. And I'm immensely grateful to all of the wonderful colleagues that I had over those many years here, as well as many of the rest of you in this room who were coming through on a regular basis. I spent roughly a decade being inspired by Doug's work and being encouraged in the most fundamental way, supported in doing field studies and case studies, and felt very much appreciated for that, and ran out and had the time of my life using Doug's roadmap for new institutional economics and actually watching these processes unfold on the ground in Africa, where I've done almost all of my research. So I had a wonderful time doing that. Meanwhile, Doug's back here discovering culture. And I may add, without benefit of a degree in anthropology. Nor, needless to say, without any help on my part. I am still in a 20-year lag trying to catch up with Doug on that, among many other issues. I was effectively far too well brainwashed by structure and change and institutions and institutional change. So I'm still stuck in the 1981-1990 Doug perspective. But I will say that my next decade of work was doing experimental economics. And I did find, or we did find in that project, that we couldn't explain everything away with institutions, although we've done our best. So there is a residual cultural factor there. And eventually maybe I'll catch up with you. I want to make two final points. And one is something that I hope others of you have experienced, but it's this. Doug's works are literally salted with so many almost throwaway important ideas that are not the main focus of the text, but that may have really just profound insights. And there's no question in my mind that through Elizabeth's machinations and work on those manuscripts, even if the ideas are not original to Doug, they are packaged and articulated in a way that they come to life and they become associated with Doug. And I want to just talk about one such idea in particular. So Doug and I have had many conversations about this, and he's made a big point about the fact that we can never know a person's ideological commitments until we see what price they've paid for that ideology. And I found this an incredibly compelling idea. But it wasn't until relatively recently that I was actually able to use it. So about 3 years ago, I left the experimental economics area and started working in corruption. And there's no roadmap, there's no methods book that tells you how you study corruption and how you penetrate a mafia. And one of the key things when you start going out and following the money and asking people questions about how a corruption network operates is knowing the good guys from the bad guys. And so I remembered what I'd learned from Doug. How do you tell the good guys from the bad guys? You look for what price they've paid for their positions that they're taking. And sure enough, it actually helps that the more repressive the regime, the stronger the signal. So you find these guys, and everybody knows who the top guys are, and it's a network. The good guys know who the other good guys are. And how do they know? Because they know how much the other good guys have paid a price for being with them. And so you work through this network, and you work through the trust that is embodied, and you learn a heck of a lot about how the system works that way. So this is an unintended consequence, I think, of some of Doug's work. The final point that I want to make goes back to culture. Doug and I have had a long-standing argument about cultural lag and how long it takes for a change to actually be effected. I work in Kenya. Kenya is a systemically corrupt country. It's really, really bad. And you might say there is a deeply entrenched culture of corruption. But there's some good signs on the horizon. They just passed a new constitution. That in itself is an interesting thing to try to explain, how they managed to get that far. But the big question now is whether Kenya is going to work its way out of this horribly bad equilibrium, and how long is it going to take, and what will the process be. And I hope that both Doug and I are around to see that happen. So I hope Doug's wrong about it taking 50 years, and I hope it happens a lot sooner. Thank you.